What's up, everybody? I hope you had a great Christmas week, and now we are into the week of the new year, and I'm sitting here in the Dallas, Texas area with Brad Springfield. So if all of you guys remember, I did a write-up about him earlier in later in the year in 2018, and I'm finally getting a chance to sit down with him in person. Brad Springfield, what is up, my friend?
Just enjoyed the holidays and some good jiu-jitsu today, and going to go back tonight and tomorrow morning.
Yeah, we got round one in just a little bit ago, and old no-gi Steven here put the gi on, and my whole thing was trying not to get choked with my gi, and you choked me today with my gi, so thank you.
Well, anytime I get a chance to train, I'm always training in the gi because I need to have grips to slow things down, so no-gi is my stretch, so I'm going to go do that tonight with you.
I appreciate you stepping into my world a little bit. Let's give a little bit of background on you for the listeners here. Brad is a blue belt. What stripe?
Two-stripe blue belt.
Two-stripe blue belt. He's been doing it for 4 years.
For 4.5 years, trained under Travis Lutter at Team Lutter in Fort Worth, Texas.
And I want to jump into you starting later in life and tell the story about, watching your son for a year, because that's an amazing story.
Yeah, so at 11 years old, my son Ethan, he began jiu-jitsu, and so he began a homeschool curriculum and didn't have gym class. And so we needed, we were looking for something just as fundamental as having some activity that was the equivalent to gym class. So he jumped in, started jiu-jitsu, and we began to sort of feel the love of the community, began to love the sport and the involvement. And in that time, I started running because, the old adage, I wasn't in good enough shape, and I wanted to start. That year, I ran 375 miles while Ethan was beginning his journey. And now, he's 16 and he's choking his dad.
Did you ever think that day would come where the day your son would just choke you out?
I did, and I will say, a lot of people say, don't you hate that? And frankly, no. It's what we pay for. He's in there training with killers, and I'm training with killers, and I'll be honest with you that when he comes at me harder than he does strangers, and he's not afraid to hurt his dad, and the only thing he does is he can embarrass me pretty easy because he's 16 and I'm 50 and a half, and he's stronger than me, and just because he's been doing it for 5.5 years now, he's his movements are a little more fluid and natural.
Yeah, and he's got 16 years of you punishing him that he's got to make up for.
And think of it this way, he's been doing jiu-jitsu for a third of his life.
I was thinking about that because when I was talking to him today, I think he said this August of 2019, it'll be 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
And to think about that, like, man, I was playing baseball and football back then, but I would much rather have this knowledge that we're all seeking now.
Yeah. And me being 4.5 years into it, I look at the long game, and instead of, when am I going to get my purple belt? I look at it from the lens of, man, how much more do I have to learn before I even think about that purple belt?
Yeah. So let's go back quickly. And I want to say and let the listeners know that because I told you, we were talking earlier in the day, I dabbled in jiu-jitsu at 16 and how it was just all cardio workouts, and they tried to scare the kids because that's when the UFC was big and they didn't want people just to walk in, think they could be MMA fighters, that kind of stuff. And it scared a lot of kids away. And I was one of those, weak-minded people at the time. After a couple months, it scared me away. That when I got, going through the stages of life I was in at the time, and I was texting you and I knew you were doing jiu-jitsu. You're the one who really brought me in full time into this, and just said, hey, go for it. Don't do what I did. Don't go running and try to get in shape and try to lose those extra pounds. Like, do jiu-jitsu now. Jiu-jitsu will help you along that journey. And I want to say, first of all, thank you so much for that. But let's dig into that a little bit, because you started at an older age, and here I was at the time. I think I was 26, 27, 27 when I started again.
Yeah, I was 46 when I started, and I tell people that at 46, starting jiu-jitsu, and at that stage in my life, I'd been running a lot in that last year, but before I started, I hadn't done a push-up in 20 years, and I even though I ran 375 miles in that year prior to beginning, I couldn't even make it through the warm-ups without gassing out, because
Yeah.
it's a totally different, it's not just cardio, it's being able to shrimp and then roll and then sustain and then do another 5-minute roll.
Yeah. See, what kind of blew my mind, talking about running is kind of, it's effortless for your brain, because you just think, okay, just move right foot, left foot over and over repetitively at a quicker pace. But in jiu-jitsu, like, you get mentally exhausted too, because there's attacks coming from everywhere. You're trying to, as you're trying to learn to defend and take care of your body, but then you're working out those muscles that you don't even get to work in the gym.
Yeah. And at 40 years old, when I turned 40, I was 325 pounds. And I sit here today and I'm between 215, 218.
And you're planning on competing at 195.
195 in the gi in August.
That's inspiring.
I don't plan on competing. I plan on winning a Master 5 World Championship blue belt.
There you go. You're not going to compete. You're going to go in there and win that thing. I love that. See, and I think that's the mindset that not only should you have, that we all should have.
Well, and so even before, so I competed last year. Masters Worlds was my first competition in jiu-jitsu, and was sitting in class in May, and Travis Lutter, my coach, was looking around, and he said, "Brad, you need to compete." And I will tell you that it's a very powerful thing when somebody believes in you, somebody else believes in you, and tells you you can go do this. And, last year was a big learning curve for me, and I've talked to Travis about it. And it was a big learning curve for me. I learned a lot about myself and things that I feel like I never thought I could do, but I did. And now the mentality doesn't shift to, I'm going to go compete. I plan on going to win. Yeah.
If you go back a little bit, and when you talked me into doing jiu-jitsu, you were still a white belt yourself. Mm-hmm. Talk about like the different stages of that. Like, because everybody, when they walk in the door at first, they're the nail, they're not the hammer, of getting through that mental like state of, okay, I just got to keep this up, I'm gonna get better. And tell me, like, when did you start noticing, hey, I'm getting better?
So and we tell stories about, at our gym, we used to have 2 locations. We had the west side and the east side, and there was friendly competition between the 2 gyms, and I trained primarily at the east side and would be able to go test myself against people while they were teammates. They weren't they weren't known quantities. So when I would go to the west side, I would test out things but the objective was to go win. And it's not necessarily all, probably not even a healthy, mindset. But the objective was to go and win, even though it was, quote unquote, in the room. But I look at, beginning jiu-jitsu, my first 2 years, because I had a white belt I had a white belt for 3 years, 820 hours I put in as a white belt. My objective really was to suck less one day, less than I did the day before.
Yeah, each day at a time.
And just, stack 2 good days on top of one another. And, Coach Travis always wanted to see us train a minimum of 3 days a week, but if you're preparing for competition, he wants your goal to be 5 days. I have to moderate that because I'm 46, 47, 48 years old, and by the time I competed, I'd already turned 50. But when I was leading up to Masters last year, there were lots of weeks that I trained five days in a week, and at 50 years old, that in and of itself is winning. I won last year by getting myself around that corner mentally to say, oh, I can do this.
Yeah, you beat yourself.
Now, and one of the black belts in our gym is a guy named Chris Westfall. Is a really, really good, not just a good human being, but a really good tactician to help me tactfully attack my own demons. And Chris tells me, you don't think about yourself competing against other people. You're competing against yourself. And once you can convince your mind that you can do it, then you can do it. And, and he's been a big influence in my jiu-jitsu career. I mean, to sit and list, to list the names of people would be too long, but, he's definitely one person that's really, really helped me a lot. But, it's getting over that mental hump, but to get back to answering your question, it's to be a little bit better today than I was yesterday, but knowing that this move that I'm drilling now, the people that I'm trying to drill it on or to hit it on have done it themselves and drilled it themselves and defended it more than I can even imagine. So it's just that repetition and just keeping going and keeping going, and knowing that it's that long game that I talked about that really has to get you there.
Dude, it's one of those thought processes, like, you know, whether you're a blue belt, purple belt, and trying to have that black belt move. Is that something you think about?
Yeah. So, you know, Calvin, I mean, using other names of folks in our gym, Calvin Hueso, who was my primary teacher for the first 3 years during my white belt days. Calvin says, you know, get that black belt move, and, you know, be that person who you doesn't mean you're a black belt, but it means that I'm more comfortable in that position or defending that position than the people against whom I'm attempting it.
Yeah, when you just spread out your attacks and learning different things. I think that's actually a big thing in life. It's, if you look at people that you're impressed by, it's usually for one thing in life, and they become so great at that one thing that maybe they're not so well-rounded in other areas. And I look at jiu-jitsu that way, and I'm thinking, and I've been thinking to myself lately, hey, maybe I need to develop that black belt move, and just something that, you know, I find myself in, you know, position to get a lot. And what I mean by black belt move, it's just, you get better, and your efficiency gets better of hitting that move than not.
Yeah. And Calvin will tell you, you know, you hit that move. How many times did you hit it tonight in the room? Now I want you to do it for the next 6 months.
And see, that's a great mindset that I've kind of been thinking about, but I don't, you know, get to bounce some of those ideas off a lot of the people that I train with, because, you know, they have the mindset like, we're going to be great at everything, which is a great mindset as well.
Sure.
But then sometimes when you're people like me, you're like, no, I just want to be great at a couple of things right now and just, you know, figure this out, you know, so I have a go-to and something like that. So I've been, you know, honestly myself digging deeper into that. But what led you into enrolling your son Ethan into jiu-jitsu? Like, why did you pick jiu-jitsu, and what led you to picking Team Lutter?
Well, I will tell you, you know, from a simplicity perspective, I'd love to tell you there's this long, you know, contemplative process that led us to Team Lutter. It was largely proximity to the house. The original gym was 3 miles from the house, so it was convenient. But Ethan had trained in Taekwondo for 3 years before. And, you know, don't get me wrong, I'm not knocking Taekwondo. It's, you know, for those people who practice it, it's a good art. And it's certainly a set of skills that are useful. Any martial art, and just merely in the discipline itself are beneficial. But what I wanted was him to have some fundamental skill in an art that would, and I don't know that there's necessarily anything that's makes you bully proof, but I don't fear for him being bullied. In, you know, now he's a fairly big kid, but what it has taught him, and I knew it would teach him in terms of the mental toughness and the fortitude and his ability to forge through a lot of problems. Because, you know, just take today, for example, if I'm laying on the mat and there's a 260-pound man in side control on me, that's a problem I alone have to figure out. There's nobody my mom is not going to come figure that out for me. My dad is not going to come figure that out for me. It's a set of problems that I have to figure out. Now, right now in my jiu-jitsu journey, it's suffering through it. But the long game again comes to tell me that I won't have to suffer through that forever. But in order for me to figure out right now, I do have to suffer through it.
Yeah. So when you were thinking that, like, it wasn't the UFC or something flashy that led you to that, but
well, I will say that you know, Travis Lutter, that name and the, you know, I actually visited his gym when he won the Ultimate Fighter 4, and regret now not having started then, because, you know, I probably would have a black belt, and at my age I may never get my black belt, and I'm okay with that. But you know, Travis is a reputable guy, and I knew he had gotten his black belt from Carlos Machado, and lineage does matter. And so, you know, those things, you know, but largely proximity. I was just lucky that his location was 3 miles from my house.
And so proximity was your first, like, indicator of, like, hey, let's just go here, see what happens, see if we like it, and then it all just escalated from there. And if you don't mind, talk about the East Gym, because we were talking earlier today, like, those stories are so cool.
Yeah. So the East Gym, so that's where Travis lived at the time, and It's where he lived through when he was in the Ultimate Fighter, and when he was getting ready for his fight with Anderson Silva. It's my understanding that Hoist Gracie spent a lot of time there training him, and but the air conditioning didn't work that great. And so we would go, and I remember looking at the thermostat one night before Friday night class, and it was July or whatever, and the inside temperature was 90 degrees, and you're wearing this big heavy gi, and you're about to go do an hour's worth at least of rolling. And
talk about that Texas heat. So my Chicago friends back home that do listen to this, tell them how it's no joke.
Yeah, so July in Texas and
triple digits.
It's even though Friday night class started at 6:30, it's still 103 outside, and the door is open just to get, and the fan is sitting at the door to bring some moving air in, and you get done and the windows are all fogged over and all that stuff, and there's pools of sweat on the mat, but there's just nothing like it in terms of the bond that it creates with you and the people that you're training with. It's a real thing. I'm sure people far more eloquent than me can explain it better, but you put your neck on the line literally, but when you see your teammates, their hands raised. I was
gonna say it's a little extra suffering in that kind of heat and that kind of training, because when you would go to the west side after that, where the air conditioning worked a little better.
Yep. And we've talked about the kids class. So Calvin that I mentioned before, he would run the kids class at the East gym, and then he'd go over to the West gym, and the kids didn't like it when Calvin would teach the class. And don't get me wrong, I'm not taking anything away from Ben, who was our who was the primary kids coach at the West gym, who was 2-time Masters world champion at purple belt. So guy's got crazy good skills himself. But I think there was some hardness at the East gym that was just inherent with the place, and I can't explain it. Other people have tried to explain it. Now, I will say that the West gym is a beautiful, big, nice facility, great, and the people are what make the gym. It's not the facility, it's not the structure, it's not the mats themselves. It's the people, and I've told Travis this a number of times that I think that the people have what's kept us there, because we've had opportunities to move. But the people at the gym really do make a big difference.
Yeah, if you don't mind, go ahead and plug the location to Travis's gym, because going there today, and I want to say thank you if Travis or anybody at the gym is listening, for welcoming myself and the rest of the family in, because it's a beautiful place. There's a bunch of awesome people there, and if you're in the Dallas area and you were looking for somewhere to train, Team Lutter is an amazing place. So if you'd plug them so people know where to find them.
Yeah, it's on Camp Bowie in Fort Worth, Coach Travis is his resume speaks for itself. Like I said, he's got his lineage. He got his black belt under Carlos Machado, which is legit as it can be. And the people there. Coach Travis is away on vacation, but he's been gracious enough that when I ask him if someone can come train, we go through the appropriate processes, and we do have visitors from time to time. Anthony Parash was at our gym not too long ago. Who was as an old friend of Travis's. Guy Metzger has been in our gym a number of times. Tim Kennedy dropped by one time, which was really cool. Joe Stevenson,
Joe Daddy
Stevenson. So you just never know who might show up on the mat. Brad Imes has traveled in and trained there. Claudia Gadelia at times. Jeff Glover.
Well, and not to mention the black belts that are in-house, because there's quite a few of them. And Brandon, I think I rolled with today, and man, he was probably given 5%, and I couldn't do anything, to show any progress on that guy. I was like, this is what it's like to be a human pretzel.
Yeah, and that's to me, that's what keeps me coming back, is that to show some level of aptitude progress, at 50 years old. Is what I strive for. And, if you are able to have, some success, and when I say some success against the upper belts, means that you don't tap as often or at all in a match with a purple belt, or you have, longer spans of time with the brown belts and the black belts. Because those guys, like I've said before, they literally hold your life in the palm of their hands, and they're all great teachers, great people, and they really do make it a sport that you want to do for a long time.
Yeah, it's a huge motivation when you see that kind of skill and that kind of level, and to think, as myself as a younger guy, of like, man, I want to be like that one day, or even you of like, man, if I could be like that too, or hey, what if my son could be like that? Like how awesome and how motivational is that feeling alone?
Well, and given the amount of help that I've gotten over the years by the upper belts, I feel a sense of obligation to be that sense of help and sometimes hope for people who, have had those struggles, because, as lower belts, we look at the black belts in our gyms as these, almost, it's almost idolatry. They're almost godlike, where there's no way that Travis Lutter ever had a struggle when he was on the mat, or Mike Alexander, or Chris Westfall, or Brandon Liebel, or go on down the line. And every single one of them thought about quitting at some point. And that's just a fact. And that's a fact of the mat.
It's the old saying, a black belt's a white belt that never quit.
But those people are the same people that sat me down in my dark times and said, you can't quit. You have to keep showing up, and the hard times don't last forever. And my dad used to tell me tough times don't last, but tough people do. And maybe I'm just not very bright and just dumb, and I just keep plugging at it. But my hope is to be a black belt in life, and being a black belt in life, I know I'm a better man for sticking to it on the mat. And those people are my family.
Do you think that since you've been doing jiu-jitsu now for 4.5 years, that has it made you like better at work or better at other things in life?
Definitely. So this is something that I think that you and I have talked about off the mat, is that, when we have struggles with different things, and, like I said before, you have to sort of figure that out. But I'm a very linear thinker, and I arrive to my conclusions with this plus this equals this, and that's indisputable. But while that might be the case in some things, but it's caused me to approach my jiu-jitsu life, has caused me to approach problem solving in a much different way. And so I may 90% of the time still arrive at the same conclusion, but I've thought through the ways to arrive at that same conclusion in different ways, largely because of jiu-jitsu.
Right. It's like sometimes life takes your back, and you have to fend that off, and work to something else, try to get to side control, or just you got to get out of those strangleholds. You're not going to tap, and it's made you hard. And I think that if it wasn't for jiu-jitsu, like that, just after practicing it for so long now, that it kind of helps you conceptualize of like, okay, like you said, it's not all linear. It all doesn't just go smoothly, like A plus B doesn't equal C. No, sometimes, you think that I'm going to go from A to B, and next thing you know, you're in D, and that's when world's got your back, and you're like, okay, I'm trying to get back to B to get to C, or, something.
Or conversely, you might feel like, 10 years ago, I might have thought, this is really a problem. But now I think, it's probably not that big of a problem, and I can shake this off. Now I might get into a bigger problem, but it's sort of like, Coach Travis talks about, if somebody's got your back and choking you, you beat that choking hand, and then, he might still have my back, but he's not choking me right now. Yeah, so solve one problem at a time, move forward. And the greatest part about it is in jiu-jitsu, I can go to the gym at night and I can completely forget about work stuff, traffic, because I'm the gym is 40 miles from my office. You forget about the traffic and forget about all the other stuff, because if you're not focused, you're gonna get choked.
Yeah. Do you think that jiu-jitsu's helped you with like road rage? Because I want to say, like, I don't even get mad at other drivers anymore.
No, and I used to be the guy that would drive right up on somebody and honk and what are you doing, fool. And it just doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, I get to go, try my best to choke somebody, and I can just picture it that it's that guy in that Prius in front of me.
Isn't it such a weird feeling? Like, have you been around people since then, since like you've kind of relaxed, and let's use the driving metaphor, because like I'm gonna use my dad. I'm gonna throw him under the bus here for a second. That like when I get by my dad, like if he's, passing somebody, on the highway and they speed up in the right lane and won't let him pass, and he's like, all yelling at him, and like it could be something as simple as that, or if somebody slams on their brakes, and he has slam on his, and he's all like mad, just he's just tensed up and just yelling, cursing, and this and that, and I'm just looking at him. I'm like, bro, chill. It's okay, Dad. When we get home in 20 minutes or whatever, like, and you're in front of that TV, does any of this really matter?
Need a little jiu-jitsu in his life.
Yeah, he does. I mean, he might give him a heart attack, but do you ever get around people like that and you're just like, yo, like, I wish I could give you some of this feeling of like, hey, relax, it's okay.
Yeah, and I've had people tell me that I'm different, and it's not for me to say if it's good, different, or bad, different. I feel like it's good, but some other people will tell the truth of whether it's good, different, or bad, different.
Has somebody told you that being more like calm and things like that's bad? I've never heard that. No.
I'm just not going to speak on, say what somebody else thinks about me or doesn't.
Yeah. We'll see. Another thing, but jiu-jitsu, you don't really care anymore because you're like, like all that matters is if I'm defending myself and defending this neck, because like what you think of me, like I don't really care. I have, a bunch of my friends trying to choke the daylights out of me. And I think that kind of helps me at work as I laugh. I'm like, these people that, sometimes when they get under your skin, you're like, I don't really care for you as like at work. I care for you as a person, but I don't care for you at work. But I think about it of, hey, I got my, some of my really good friends now, like they're just trying to choke the daylights out of me. But yet I'm so much more close to them and they do so much more harm to me than you can do to me at, at places like work or, on the highway.
And they're capable of it.
Exactly.
Very, very capable of it.
And seeing, as a newly blue belt here, like I think about like, I'm just at the very beginning of the spectrum of like, man, if I feel this way already, what am I going to feel, as I keep leveling up and, as my movie plays out, and like, I'm like, oh, like I already am addicted to this feeling now. I can't wait until this feeling, keeps progressing and I understand it more. And Josh on the podcast, he said the more he understands jiu-jitsu, the more he understands life. And I've always held on to that now, especially. And I think about that. I'm like, man, I'm just at the beginning of this and I feel so good. I can't wait, till 10 years down the road, 15 years down the road, 20 years down the road of hopefully, continuing to do this. But like you said, those dark times do come on you. And sometimes you question yourself, you question what you're doing, and man, it beats you down. But like, let's talk about like the friends you make a lot. Like, cause a lot of times like the friends I've made at the gym, and also talking to you, who is training like 5 states away, like have kept me motivated to keep going. Talk about like the friendships you made, that keep you motivated and keep you, showing up.
Yeah. So I remember one distinct evening. I was training at the East Gym and it was a particularly tough night. And my training partner had gotten to side control, and Coach Travis was standing there, and he was like, "Brad, you got to get out of there. You got to get out of there. You got to get out of there." And I just felt helpless, and there was nothing I can do. And side control has always been a big problem for me to try to get out of, which is why it's my favorite offensive position. And then I remember going over to sitting on the wall next to Coach Travis, and I said, I just don't think jiu-jitsu is my thing. And that night he talked me out of quitting. I was basically done. And he said, "Nope, you're not going to quit. And you're not going to quit because this gym needs you." And he looked at me and he motioned, hands, waving back and forth between us. He said, "Because you're better at this part than I am." And there have been times I know that since then that Travis asked me to work with a certain person or that, but the people aspect of this, and also the fact that there are other figures in Ethan's life that are people, that he can look up to and admire, and I'm placing his life in their hands, and it's people from all walks of life, people that we otherwise would not have been exposed to, people who weren't born in this country, and people who don't look like me and him, but they're as good as gold, and their heart's in the right spot. And it doesn't matter what somebody wears. It doesn't matter how somebody's socioeconomic status. It's that they're there for the betterment of themselves and each other. and they're invested in the quality of time that they're spending and investing in their training partners. And all those things matter. And to really be a part of something like this means that, you trust and you love, and these folks have been really good to me and to Ethan, and been a big factor in our journeys.
Yeah. And see, that's so beautiful, because I'm to the point now, I just turned 30, but even a few years ago, like in my mid, 20s, like it's hard, especially when you move to a new place or you're trying something new, to like make friends, as an adult. And if it wasn't for jiu-jitsu myself, I wouldn't have the dozens of new friends that I have now because of it. And I was so worried, because when I moved to that new place up in Chicago, I was like, man, it's kind of lonely up here, with the things going on in life. I was like, I feel like all alone. Got into training, and then I realized, like, there are those people from different walks of life. They don't look like me. They don't do the same things that I do. They're not into sports or something like I am, other than maybe, UFC or something that's flashy and that's martial arts related. But once you find that one common thing, which is jiu-jitsu, you open up your mind to maybe like some computer tech software friends or something just different, or some salespeople, like some worlds you never thought you'd get into. And you start to listen to them, and you're like, wow, we come to a lot of the same conclusions from those different routes that aren't, so linear, or so we thought. And then you can put a face to and humanize these people of like, man, we're all these cool, unique individuals, and you just get to learn and grow from them. And then you strike up friendships, which I thought was the hardest thing to do as an adult. Did you think that you would make, the dozens of new friends as a 46, 50-year-old man? No.
And it's not just friends. It's the depth of those friendships. And, because you watch these movies, and to me, what makes a great movie is that, there's the movie Stand By Me, and in that movie, every person in that movie has a moment of vulnerability where they struggle with themselves, and that to me is jiu-jitsu, because like I said before, even the baddest of the bad have their moments where they consider not carrying on with it. And everybody has their moments. So we share that, and we share those struggles. But in order to appreciate those high moments, you have to have those struggles. And I know Scott mentioned her, but LaChastity Cloud, our teammate, Army veteran, Pan Am champ this year, after spending a couple of weeks in the hospital with, lots and lots of health problems, went and won Pan Ams, got her purple belt, goes out and wins purple belt worlds. That the sweetness of that victory for her, I cried because I know she busted her hump to get there. And not to say anybody who competed didn't, but I personally have seen a lot of those struggles myself. And so it makes me appreciate those for her.
Yeah. And I was going to say, like, even those friends that you see, like some people, you may know have been homeless at a time. And when you see them get these victories, and like, it looks like life is at least giving them a fair, handshake at the time, it's like those will bring you to tears. And it's weird. I think the more, I don't know if it's the older I'm getting, and I think I mentioned this before on a podcast, if it's the older I'm getting or the more I'm training and I understand the struggle, like I feel like I understand it now. Like I realize that there's going to be deeper processes of more understanding of it, that when you realize like the struggle that like all of this is for not only yourself, but for everybody else around you, or, even if you see them a lot competing on TV and you're just so happy for them to win, like I get a little more emotional, like the deeper I get into jiu-jitsu for different things in life. Like it could be a movie sometimes it's not getting me. So I don't know if it's like the struggle of like jiu-jitsu and how real it all is, or if I'm just getting older, but it makes me a little more emotional, which is
the sentimentality of it all. And, but it's the sweetness and the honesty of the sport that you win or you learn. And, when you do win, you've struggled to get there.
Yeah. I mean, it's very, 1 in a million. Do you see that prodigy that just walks through? I mean, and that's granted, we don't know their backstory and all that, because we probably don't train with them, but like there's some people that just have that gift. But most of the people that are succeeding, they've, bled for it. They've cried for it, of course, gallons and gallons of sweat. And to me, like that's the cool thing about jiu-jitsu, is because, it's just as much mental as it is physical. And then, sometimes injuries and accidents happen and you overcome those things. Like you're saying about Cloud being in the hospital and then just going out and then turning it on and doing her thing and, you know, becoming this champion. It's like, man, like you look back on your life and you think, and this is probably 'cause I'm reading that David Goggins book of like how much you leave on the table in your own life of like, you know, I didn't feel well that day, so I didn't get up and do that. And then you kind of a little bit later regret it. Like, you know, I wasn't that bad. I should have gone and done it or whatever it was. I didn't give that extra effort. And then you see these people all around you just inspiring you. Like, this person was like dying a few days ago and now they're out here, you know, kicking, you know, some tail. Like, what am I doing with my life? And then it just makes you better as a person. Like, and that's why, like, these people's stories need to be told, because honestly, like, I was a little worried for myself because I was overweight. And when I started jiu-jitsu, and the reason I was saying I have to thank you is because like I was like projecting in my life of like, man, what am I going to be when I get older? Cause like people in my family, they're large, and I'm like, man, am I going to be diabetic? Am I going to have heart problems? Am I going to be like this? And then I just kept telling myself, well, what am I going to do when it's too late? And then so talking to you, you're like, dude, I'm 46. I gave this a go. You need to do this now, because if I was in your position, you know, at 27 at the time, like I would love to start it over then and do it right then. Don't waste any time. Don't, you know, go run off those extra pounds. Get in jiu-jitsu right now. And honestly, like if it wasn't for that kind of inspirational, you know, ness for me of like, man, if Brad can do this, then, and he thinks I can do this, then I got to do this.
Yeah. And I think that, so I've learned a lot in which is virtually nothing. But for me, and I'll put that in perspective. So when I started jiu-jitsu, you know, I had a goal. I wanted to get my blue belt in 18 months. Got to get my blue belt in 18 months. And I had this self-imposed target, and it didn't happen. But by the time I got to 18 months, I realized, Brad, you're not ready. And you start to realize what you don't know. And, you know, and 18 months in, I still didn't know what I didn't know. And now I'm 4.5 years in, and I'm realizing that's not even a question to ask. I'm not in any hurry to get another belt. I will progress in my own time, which is different pace than what you'll progress, which is a different pace than what Scott will progress, and it's a different pace than what Ethan will progress, because we'll all get to where we need to be in our own time. And it'll all work itself out. And, you know, I think far too often people look at their belt and measure that as a measurement of success. And it's my opinion that success for me is just showing up and training. And don't worry about my belt. Don't worry about who I'd beat or don't beat. Worry about training and doing the right thing and being a good teammate to my teammates, and being a good student to my coaches, and you know, trying to be a help to somebody else who might have a struggle.
Yeah. And I think you said it beautifully earlier when we were just talking about, what is it, a Hoist Gracie saying about the belt?
Yeah. Hoist Gracie said, this belt only covers 2 inches of my ass, so I got to cover the rest.
And honestly, that's all a belt is. Like,
yeah.
Like it's cool to like tell your friends and show your friends. But other than that, like if you were to fight your friends, even who don't even have a belt, like you still have to cover your own ass.
Yeah. And so it's a funny thing that, you know, when somebody new joins our gym, and I always love to see new folks join the gym, because it's an opportunity for me to share, you know, and I'm going to use a term, it's to sort of evangelize, if you will.
We're a cult.
Yeah. And it is a cult. It's definitely a cult. But I will say that I get an opportunity to evangelize what jiu-jitsu has done for me. And I appreciate you having me on the podcast, because this is another opportunity for me to do that. But invariably, when somebody new comes to the gym, they will seek out usually 2 people in our class. We've got a fairly big, a regular attendance at our evening classes, and they'll either go for the really young guy, which is Ethan, or they'll go for the really old guy, which is me. And oftentimes both. And you know, Ethan, you know, I don't know his mind, but he's got a heart of gold, and he doesn't want to quote beat up on anybody. But except for his dad. But you know, and he can and does. But you know, what I try to do more than anything is to get somebody to come back.
Yeah, because you know how it's changed your life. And see, that's every time I see somebody new walk through the door, whether they, look like they've had a rough life, whether they had an easy life, I look at everybody the same way that I felt. And I remember feeling,
I was scared to death.
I was scared to death.
And I'd been around it for a year.
Right. But I knew I wanted to change my life. I knew those two things. And we were talking earlier, like when you start jujitsu and you're, being the nail, like you either love it and, like you love that you got, basically beaten to death and you want to learn those skills that person did to you, or you tuck tail and you run the other way. Like those are the two kinds of people. But like, I always think of that same thought is like like reading David Goggins, you got to know your why. Once you're running, past the limits of that, you think should be humanly possible kind of thing, you have to know your why. Like, why am I doing this? And jiu-jitsu is the same way. Like, even on those days, like when you're still the nail, like, as a blue belt and a purple belt and a brown belt, like you got to know why you started this. And I always think back of like, when times are tough of like, why did I start this? And it's because I want to be the best version of me. I want to be a better person. Those things, that's what keeps me coming back. And, and like, even though I have to, text you sometimes and say, man, I'm not feeling this, or, this back injury, like, and you send, like one little line of encouragement, like we don't get like too philosophical with it or deep, but I'm like, you know what, that's all I needed to hear, that it's exactly right. And then you start thinking of, okay, remember your why did you do this?
And the other thing is for me is, if I want a purple belt, I can go buy a purple belt. That doesn't make me a purple belt. And you can go buy things that you can't earn.
Right. And on the mats, everything is earned.
And so I'll tell you a quick story. July 15th, 2017 was our ranking day. And Ethan and I do a volunteer camp every summer, and we drive to Indiana from Fort Worth. And we were scheduled to leave that day, and ranking day was scheduled for last July 15th, and that's the day I got my blue belt. And after class, after the blue belt ceremony, I told Travis, I was like, I didn't feel like I deserved it, and I feel silly after that because Travis Lutter's name's on the door, and I know he doesn't give anything away, nothing. Anything that anybody has ever gotten from Travis Lutter has 100% earned it. And that is one of the proudest things I've ever done, because, I graduated from basic training at 18 years old, and starting jiu-jitsu at 46 was exponentially more difficult to me physically and mentally, because, in basic training, you got a graduation date. There's no clock. And I told Travis a long time ago, I told him this very thing. I said, I probably won't, this was a long time ago. I said, I probably won't ever be a world champion. But I'm better because I'm a part of the gym, and I'm better for doing what I'm going to do. But he told me, he's like, don't put limits on that. He said, Paul Halme, who's one of Travis's closest friends and a no-gi world champion, former UFC fighter himself, he had said the same thing. And, Paul's black belt and world champion. And so I'm evolving. And to say that I'm evolving at 50 years old is a pretty cool thing.
Yeah. And how do you feel? Because like your brother was talking about, he's doing it now, and he's like, I'm doing it mainly because I'm trying to avoid the Grim Reaper a little longer. Do you think that like all this has helped prolong, health-wise for you as well?
Sure. And, my dad died at 66, and, being 50, your parents are always your barrier between yourself and your own mortality. And, I look at that and I think, man, I got 16 years left until I'm dad's age. Now, my dad didn't live this lifestyle. And so there are things, and as a dad, I try to tell Ethan, you worry about the things you can worry about. You worry about the things you can control. So being healthier is something I can control. Going to class when I don't want to go to class is something I can control. And so then I have to do that. Now, I might get tapped 25 times in an advanced class on a night that I don't feel good. That is 1,000% better than sitting on my butt in front of the television.
Yeah, not getting better.
And those nights where you struggle are when you get better.
Yeah, those are the nights you need the most. Like I was thinking about that today. Like even when we were going, like and the gi's all new to me. Like I started out pretty good and pretty comfortable, and then got to going with like a lot of those higher level guys, and I was like, oh man, I was like, this reminds me all over again of those nights when you didn't want to go, but you're so glad you're there because like even though I'm getting choked, I'm learning something, I'm getting better, I'm still exercising. I mean, like there's all those health benefits, there's the mental benefits, there's the getting better on the mats, benefits. Like it's not just one thing either. Like even on those nights you don't want to go, there's so much to it. But now that we've all, we got to do this because we got to get ready here in a little bit to go to training session number 2 today, and then we got another one in the morning that I'm excited about. But I'm doing this segment now. Like, now that we're all into this and we're all kind of jiu-jitsu nerds, who is your favorite non-person that so they can't be from the gym, like to watch, study, and try to emulate your game after a jiu-jitsu practitioner?
So my favorite, I'm going to answer that with 2 people. My favorite person to watch has always been Rafa Mendes. But Rafa Mendes is a smaller guy, and he's unbelievably efficient, and for a very small guy is able to play a pressure game. And that pressure game is the game that I like. How
big is Rafa? I know I'm picturing him in my mind.
140 pounds.
I was about to say he's a little guy.
140 pounds or so. But in terms of people whose games that I enjoy, I'm going to go with my own my own personal version of the GOAT would be Roger Gracie. Big man, able to impose his will, even in advanced age. Submitted Buchecha last year. Just incredibly efficient, but lots of pressure, lots of, strategic, very mentally tough, grind you out. And, but I'm sort of a jiu-jitsu nerd and watch a lot of that stuff.
Yeah. Having known you a little bit and, of course, the threads and messages we all send back and forth, I kept thinking in my head, you're going to say Megaton Diaz.
Well, and it's only, I love the guy, and he's a tremendous inspiration, because his ability to smile and I watch every one of his Instagram videos. It's what's up, guys, and he always does it with a smile. I talked to him for 45 minutes this year at Masters, and he's competed at every one, and just he keeps going. But in terms of his game, he plays a bottom game and is incredible at what he does. But I like the pressure aspect of what Roger does.
How beautiful is it, bringing it back to that, how you talk to these people, at Master Worlds or, some random tournament. How beautiful is it that we're so close to like the legends of the sport and the legends of, just martial arts in general that you'll see, or maybe they have kids at these tournaments and they're so nice and so friendly. They'll take pictures with you. They'll have conversations with you and, share personal stories and this and that. Because if we're playing baseball or NFL or whatever, we're not going to get to talk to these professional athletes like that. We may run across one of them randomly, but just one. Here you can run across them all.
Yeah. And I went to, so this year at Masters, Scott, my brother Scott, went with us, and I introduced him to Eduardo Telles, and Eduardo Telles is the king of the Turtle Guard. Saw him on day 1, and he asked me what day I competed, and then I saw him the day before I competed, and he said what time, and I told him, and I looked over there when I was competing, and he was standing there watching me.
Yeah, after just a conversation you had, he was like, "Man, I want to come see this guy. Like, I enjoyed this conversation." And you don't get that. You're not going to go, do a rec league baseball game and have the Texas Rangers over here come watch you.
But and the other thing is that I'm really spoiled that, I train under Travis Lutter, and, Travis is shooing people away when he's coaching people, from our gym. And I'm not saying that in a derogatory way. Travis is a great guy. He's very approachable. but I train under a legend.
Yeah, sometimes it's time for business. Like you don't want to talk to a ball player when they're going to go up to bat or they're going to go out
Exactly.
and play offense or defense. Like there's times not to, and you got to respect when not to. But like if they're hanging out, they're so friendly. Like I would say 99% of them. You may run across that one person but you're going to run across that one person even at your job.
But and that's exactly right. And I got other texts the day that I competed. Bobby Alexander's a guy in our gym. He's the 170-pound champion for Fight to Win. He's a very, very decorated grappler and all around wonderful human being. Mike Alexander from our gym sent me some texts, and these people, they invest their time in you, and while I sort of know who Eduardo Tellez is, and I talked to him a little bit. These guys that are with us every day, and they're bigger legends to me because they're invested with me and in me, and they do what they can to help me, and that's huge.
Yeah, it is, because if it wasn't for those people we train with day in, day out, we wouldn't be the practitioners we are and on the paths to success that we all believe we're on now, which is honestly, like, that's the best human trait, is feeling like, hey, I'm on a good path in life for myself. This isn't for everybody, but this is good for me to make me the best human I can be.
And I am nobody's, benchmark for anything at the gym. All I can aspire to be is to be able to be there and be there for somebody and help somebody if that's the case. But these other people have invested in me, and I feel, and like I said earlier, a sense of obligation to do that for others if I can, and that's real, and that's one of the really quirky things about jiu-jitsu, and we were talking to Travis on earlier in the week, and somebody had made comment about Ethan helping them out, and how much that was a big difference, and the thing is that he's 16 years old and he's offering perspectives on jiu-jitsu. He's not really going to be the one giving life lessons right now, but I'm proud of the fact that he's helping in those aspects where he can, because he does have, I wish I'd started at 11 years old.
Oh yeah.
But he has perspectives at 11 and going through his struggles. Because think about joining that gym where you were today at 13, walking in there with all those killers every single day. And he'd been the biggest kid in the kids class for a couple of years. And now he's, talk about low man on the totem pole and struggling through it. But, it's one of the many reasons I'm really proud of him.
Oh yeah. In a decade, he's going to be able to look back on this and just be like, man, look at the life lessons I learned that I had no idea at the time. And it's the same thing, with all of us, like wherever we are in our stage right now and whatever age, we're going to look back in, a handful of years and just be like, man, if it wasn't for what I went through and this and that in my own journey, like I wouldn't be here today. And that's what's so beautiful about all of this. And I'm sorry I didn't even lead off with this, but you're an Army veteran as well. And again, I want to thank you for your service, because like you may feel like it's not much, but like there's people like me who didn't even, put in my time. So I just want to say thank you. And everybody that's listening, come shout at Brad, plug your Instagram so everybody can find you, and let him know what you thought of the episode, and send me some messages. And I love the feedback, and let us know how we can make this better. And just, tell Brad thanks everybody for being such a great, person on the podcast, and somebody I'm, finally glad that I got to sit down and have this conversation with you, because I've been doing this now for 9-10 months, it feels like. And there was just, a list of like people I really want on, and you were near the top of that list, because, if it wasn't for you and getting me on this jiu-jitsu journey, helping me meet people, that I've met so far that have, helped me do this podcast, like none of this would be happening and nobody would get to hear this conversation. So if it wasn't for you being the lead dog in this wolf pack of getting me to do jiu-jitsu, I would not be here today. And I'm so thankful for you, and I appreciate you coming on.
Well, answer your first question. My Instagram is Brad Springfield, and Brad Springfield on Facebook. So either place, hit me up, send me a message. Would love to hear from you. But I'm super proud of you because of the accomplishments you've made. You just graduated college. You've worked really hard for that, and being a student and being out of state and making time to train. those are all sacrifices, and you've done all of those things, and I believe that they will lead to good times in your life for you. But I think that that being able to be there for somebody might be my place. And if that's the case, I'm good with it. And Steven's kind of joking, but when I was leading up to Masters last year, I was sending him and my brother texts 4 and 5 nights a week, and we're showing up at the gym, and I felt like heck, struggling a little bit, but we did it, and I'll do it again this year. And and those are important things, and to have those circles in your life of those people that encourage you, but also those people that tell you, hey, step away from the cheese pizza today. And I've listened to every one of Steven's episodes, and I know Josh is a huge mentor to you. And Josh and I connected last week and exchanged a couple of messages, and I'm proud that you've found those people who influence you, because we all need those people to help push different buttons in our life. And you're one that pushes buttons for me to help steer me on these things, because, honestly, the accountability side of things, if I'm sending you a text message from in front of the gym, that means my butt's there. And if that's the reason that I'm there, who cares? That means I'm there.
Yeah, man, I am so grateful for you, Brad. I appreciate those kind words there. I'm ready to wrap this, unless you got one last thing you want to say. Any shout outs to anybody? And
no, just thanks again for having me on. And I look forward to, where our respective journeys will take us, but they'll be intertwined nonetheless.
All right, everybody. Thank you guys for listening. Please rate, comment, subscribe to the podcast, share it with your friends, listen to the episodes you want to listen to. Just let me know how I can make this better. And I appreciate everybody that has given their time to listen to this today. So I can't remember what Head Kick Radio episode we're on. It's like 32, 33, somewhere in there. I appreciate every single one of you. Brad, again, thank you so much.
Thank you.
We out.
Say hello to the stars above.